They called me the family disappointment. It wasn't said to my face, at least not always. But I heard it in the whispers, saw it in the sidelong glances, felt it in the weight of silence when I walked into rooms. I'm Amanda Mitchell, and until last week, I was the black sheep of a family that measured success in degrees, job titles, and country club memberships. The day everything changed started like any other Thanksgiving at the Mitchell estate. I parked my modest Honda Civic between my brother James's Tesla and my sister Catherine's Range Rover. The contrast wasn't subtle, but then again nothing in my family ever was. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting my simple black sweater. No designer labels, no flashy jewelry. Just me carrying a homemade pie and years of quiet determination. As I walked up the marble steps, I could already hear the voices inside, the familiar symphony of achievement and ambition. Catherine just made partner at Goldman. James's tech startup got another round of funding. Did you hear about Cousin Michael's merger deal? I took a deep breath and opened the door. The foyer was exactly as I remembered: crystal chandelier, family photos arranged perfectly on the walls. Though somehow none of them included me. Amanda. My mother's voice carried from the kitchen, more announcement than greeting. You're late. Again. Traffic, I said simply, though I'd actually been in a meeting that could change everything. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. I made my way to the kitchen where my mother stood orchestrating dinner like a symphony conductor. Her Chanel suit was immaculate, not a single gray hair out of place. She barely glanced at my pie. Oh, you brought dessert. How nice. Put it with the others. The others being the professional pastries from that expensive bakery downtown. I placed my pie quietly among them, knowing it wouldn't be served. Amanda. My sister Catherine emerged from the living room, glass of wine in hand. Still working at that, what do you call it? Tech support thing. I smiled faintly. Something like that. Let them think I answered phones all day. Let them assume I was barely getting by. The truth was far more interesting, but timing was everything. Well, at least you're employed, she said with that particular tone, part pity, part superiority. Did you hear about my promotion? Senior partner. Youngest in the firm's history. Congratulations, I said, meaning it. Catherine had always been brilliant. She'd also always needed everyone to know it. James appeared next, his startup CEO status worn like armor. Hey sis, he said, glancing at my outfit. H&M having a sale? Target actually, I replied. His smirk widened. If he only knew the real cost of my success, not in dollars, but in countless sleepless nights, calculated risks, and silent sacrifices. Dad was in his study naturally, the sacred space where family legacies were discussed and disappointments were measured. He looked up from his desk as I entered. Amanda, he said, my name heavy with unspoken judgment. Glad you could make time for family. I nodded, choosing silence over explanation. How could I tell him I'd just closed a deal that would make his annual income look like pocket change? That while they thought I was struggling in some dead-end job, I'd built something revolutionary. The dining room was a museum of success. Awards, degrees, and photographs covered the walls. Catherine's law school graduation, James's feature in Tech Weekly, Mom's charity gala speeches. The empty spaces spoke volumes about where I stood in the family hierarchy. As we gathered around the table, the usual parade began. Updates on promotions, investments, acquisitions. Each achievement laid out like fine china, meant to shine and impress. Catherine's firm just landed the Anderson account, Mom announced proudly. $3 billion in assets under management. James's app got featured in the App Store, Dad added. Top 10 in its category. Then came the inevitable pause, the moment where they'd usually skip over me. But this time Aunt Sarah, ever the pot stirrer, turned her attention my way. And what about you, Amanda? Still doing whatever it is you do? The table went quiet. All eyes turned to me, some curious, most pitying. I could feel the weight of their expectations, their assumptions, their disappointments. Oh, you know, I said softly, just working. Such a shame, Aunt Sarah stage whispered to my mother. She had such potential. If only she'd followed the family path. I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. They had no idea that tomorrow morning Forbes would announce their 30 under 30 list. That my little tech support thing was actually an AI company revolutionizing quantum computing. That the whatever it is you do had caught the attention of every major tech giant in Silicon Valley. Remember when she turned down Harvard Business School? Uncle Robert chimed in. Could have had a real career. At least she's independent, Mom offered weakly, the faintest praise she could muster. Even if it's modest. Dad cleared his throat. Well, not everyone can be an achiever. Someone has to do the regular jobs. I cut into my turkey, letting their words wash over me. In less than 12 hours, their whole perception would shatter. The Forbes article wasn't just an announcement. It was a revelation. My company, quietly built over 5 years, was now valued at $4.2 billion. My net worth, hidden behind shell companies and careful planning, would make Catherine's partner's salary look like an allowance. Did anyone see the market predictions for next quarter? James asked, steering the conversation back to familiar territory. My startup's positioned perfectly. I let them talk, let them bask in their perceived successes. Let them think I was the family disappointment one last time. Tomorrow would change everything, but tonight I had a front row seat to the last performance of their outdated show. Amanda, Catherine said suddenly, you should really talk to Mark at my firm. He's hiring entry-level positions. Could be a fresh start for you. I smiled, thinking of the email sitting in my inbox from Mark CO, practically begging for a partnership with my company. Thanks, I said. I'll keep that in mind. The evening continued, a carefully choreographed dance of subtle digs and backhanded compliments. Each time they mentioned my situation, I thought about the Forbes photoshoot hidden in my phone, the headlines already queued for morning release. As dessert arrived, store-bought pies only, of course, Dad raised his glass for the annual toast. To the Mitchell family legacy, he declared. To achievement, ambition, and excellence. They clinked glasses while I held mine steady, waiting. In just a few hours they'd learn what real achievement looked like. What real ambition could build. What excellence meant beyond their narrow definition. Maybe next year will be Amanda's year, Aunt Sarah offered, not unkindly but with that familiar condescension. I caught my reflection in the silver serving tray, calm, composed, knowing. Maybe it will, I said quietly. Pass the turkey? 5 years earlier I sat in a tiny studio apartment, surrounded by empty coffee cups and code running across 3 monitors. This was where it all began, not in Harvard's hallowed halls or Goldman's trading floors, but in a cramped space that my family would have been embarrassed to visit. My laptop pinged. Another email from my mother. Darling, James is hosting a tech networking event. Perfect opportunity for you to find a real job. Do try to dress appropriately if you come. I minimized the email, focusing instead on the complex algorithm flowing across my screen. What they didn't know was that I'd discovered something revolutionary in quantum computing. Something that would change everything. It started during my disappointing job at a small tech firm, the one my family thought was basic IT support. In reality, I was leading a small research team working on quantum algorithms that could revolutionize data processing. While Catherine collected law firm partnerships and James chased startup funding, I was quietly filing patents that would later become priceless. Your code is incredible, Marcus, my first employee, said one late night. Why don't you tell your family what you're really building? I remembered my father's words when I declined Harvard. You're choosing mediocrity, Amanda. That's not the Mitchell way. They wouldn't understand, I replied, typing faster. Not yet. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. At 3 a.m. while my family slept in their mansion, I solved a quantum computing problem that had stumped experts for decades. My hands shook as I verified the results. The next morning, while my mother texted about Catherine's latest court victory, I was meeting with venture capitalists. They got it immediately. This is revolutionary, one said, sliding a term sheet across the table. We want an early stage. Whatever you need. I took minimal funding, maintaining control. Built everything from ground up, selecting each team member carefully. We worked in an unmarked office building, away from the tech hub where James hosted his networking parties. Every family dinner became an exercise in restraint. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, each holiday a parade of achievements that weren't mine. Or so they thought. Still at that help desk job? James would ask while my company quietly acquired his competitors. You could always go back to school, Mom would suggest as I signed contracts worth millions. I lived simply, drove my old car, kept wearing non-designer clothes. Every dollar went back into the company. When Catherine bought her Range Rover, I was buying server farms. When James celebrated his app's millionth download, I was developing technology that would make his look primitive. Then came the government contracts. The military implications of our quantum computing breakthroughs attracted attention at the highest levels. I sat in Pentagon meetings wearing my cheap clothes, making decisions that would reshape national security. "Sorry I missed your charity gala, Mom," I'd say over the phone while signing classified documents. "Work's been busy." "Oh darling, answering phones must be so exhausting," she'd reply. The company grew. Quietly, strategically. No flashy press releases, no social media buzz. Just solid innovation and execution. My team understood the vision. We weren't building for show, we were building for impact. One Tuesday morning, my CFO walked in with a valuation report. "Amanda," she said, "we've crossed 4 billion. I stared at the numbers while my phone buzzed with another family text. Catherine bragging about her new summer house. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Forbes reporter called on a Wednesday. "Your quantum computing breakthroughs are remarkable," she said. "We want to feature you in 30 Under 30. I hesitated. This would change everything. No more hiding, no more quiet building. "We've verified your company's valuation," she continued. "This is going to be big." That same evening, I sat through another family dinner. Mom proudly announced James's latest funding round, $10 million. I thought about my last contract, $500 million classified. "Maybe Amanda could invest," Uncle Robert joked. "If she saved anything from her little job." I excused myself to take a call. The Pentagon again. Another project, another billion-dollar implication. Through the dining room window, I could see my family laughing, celebrating their visible successes, completely unaware of what was coming. The photo shoot for Forbes was surreal. They wanted to capture the hidden genius angle. The quiet revolutionary who built an empire in secret. "Your family really doesn't know?" the photographer asked, adjusting his camera. "They will," I said, thinking of the upcoming Thanksgiving dinner. The week before the Forbes release, I sat in my real office, the top floor of a building I owned. Monitors showed our global operations, quantum computers processing data that would reshape industries. My assistant knocked. "Your mother called. Wanted to remind you about Thanksgiving dinner," she said, and I quote, "Try to be on time for once." I looked out over the city, at buildings where decisions were made using my technology. At streets where cars ran on systems my company had optimized. At a world that was already changing because of work my family thought was just tech support. "Tell her I'll be there," I said. The day before Thanksgiving, final preparations for the Forbes release were made. The article was set to go live at 6 a.m. Eastern. My team had prepared for the media storm, the investor calls, the inevitable questions. "Your phones will explode," my PR director warned. "Everyone will want to know how you built this in secret." I thought of all the family dinners where I sat quietly, letting them assume I was struggling. All the condescending advice I'd absorbed while closing billion-dollar deals. That night, I parked my Honda outside my real house, a modest 3-bedroom I used when not staying at my penthouse. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Wearing something nice tomorrow? Mom's invited some important people." I looked at my closet, designer clothes still in garment bags, never worn. Tomorrow I'd wear my usual simple outfit. Let them see that success didn't need Gucci labels or Rolex watches. The Forbes article was perfect. The photos professional but understated. The numbers undeniable. My net worth, my company's impact, the technological breakthroughs, all laid out in black and white. As I went to bed that night, I thought about how everything would change. How the whispers would stop, the condescension would fade, the disappointment would transform into disbelief. But mostly I thought about the look that would cross their faces when they realized that while they were broadcasting their success, I was quietly building something revolutionary. Tomorrow, over turkey and stuffing, their definition of achievement would be completely rewritten. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a soft ping from my phone, 6 a.m. Forbes had gone live. I lay in bed for a moment, knowing the world was about to shift. My PR team had already sent the first metrics. Article trending, shares exploding, comments flooding in. I made coffee and waited. My brother James called first at 6:13 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. Catherine was next, 3 times in 5 minutes. Then Mom, Dad, Aunt Sarah. Uncle Robert, a cascade of calls and texts that made my phone dance across the kitchen counter. Amanda, is this true? Call me immediately. What's going on? $4.2 billion? I silenced my phone and got ready for dinner, choosing my usual simple black sweater and slacks. Today they'd learn that power didn't need designer labels. By noon the story had exploded. CNBC picked it up. Tech's hidden billionaire. The quantum computing revolutionary no one saw coming. Wall Street Journal. Mitchell Innovations. The stealth company reshaping global technology. Bloomberg. Meet Amanda Mitchell, the secretive genius behind modern quantum computing. My PR director called. It's chaos out here. Every major network wants an interview. The Pentagon's making statements about your contracts. Your company's stock would be surging if you were public. I smiled. Let's focus on Thanksgiving dinner first. When I pulled up to my parents' house at 2 p.m., the scene was different. Security guards hired by my concerned father after reporters started showing up stood at the gate. My old Honda caused visible confusion until they checked their list. Ms. Mitchell, one said, suddenly standing straighter. Sorry, we didn't, recognize the car. The driveway was full of familiar luxury vehicles, but now my Civic didn't seem modest. It seemed like a statement. I could hear the commotion inside before I even reached the door. It swung open before I could knock. Mom stood there, perfectly coiffed as always, but her hands were shaking. Amanda, she whispered like she was seeing me for the first time. Why didn't you tell us? I stepped past her into the foyer, now crowded with family members who'd apparently arrived early for the show. The usual Thanksgiving chatter was replaced by tense silence. Dad emerged from his study, holding a tablet with the Forbes article still glowing on the screen. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. 4.2 billion, he said finally, each word careful and measured. Give or take, I replied quietly. Market fluctuations, you know. Catherine sat on the stairs, still in her power suit but looking oddly deflated. Her phone kept buzzing, probably her law firm partners realizing who her sister really was. James stood by the fireplace, gripping his whiskey glass too tightly. The Forbes article had mentioned acquiring some of his competitors. He'd been pitching to my company for months, never knowing who really owned it. But, you drive a Honda, Aunt Sarah said weakly, as if this was the most shocking part. It's reliable, I answered, walking to the kitchen with my pie. This time no one made comments about store-bought being better. Mom followed me, wringing her hands. Darling, all this time, we thought, why didn't you say anything? I placed my pie carefully on the counter. Would it have mattered? When I declined Harvard, you'd already decided my path. When I took that first job, you'd already written the story. But the Pentagon, quantum computing, billions. Her voice cracked. We're your family. Yes, I said softly. And family should believe in you without needing proof. The dining room was eerily quiet as everyone took their seats. The usual hierarchy had shattered. Catherine's partner salary, James's startup valuation, even Dad's corporate empire. Everything looked different now. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Well, this is unexpected. Is it? I asked, looking around the table. Or did you just never bother to expect it from me? Dad stood suddenly, wine glass in hand. His traditional toast, but for the first time he seemed uncertain. To the Mitchell family legacy, he started, then stopped. The words, achievement, and excellence, stuck in his throat as he looked at me. To quiet revolution, I offered, raising my water glass. To building rather than boasting. To success that doesn't need announcements. Mom fainted then, actually fainted, when someone's phone showed another headline. Mitchell Innovations receives $10 billion buyout offer. As they rushed to fan her, I stayed seated, calmly cutting my turkey. Pass the cranberry sauce? I asked James, who hadn't moved since the Forbes notification hit his phone. You bought Comtech last month, he whispered. That was you. Among others, I nodded. Your pitch was interesting, by the way. Just not quite what we were looking for. Catherine found her voice next. Mark, my firm Sue, he's been trying to reach you all morning. I know, I said. We're restructuring his company's entire digital infrastructure. The contract's worth more than your firm's annual revenue. Dad returned, helping a wobbly mom back to her seat. Their faces had lost that certainty, that assured confidence that they knew best. "Why now?" Dad asked finally. "Why reveal everything today?" I looked around the table at the family photos on the walls that had never included me, at the awards and achievements they'd celebrated while dismissing mine, at the empty spaces where my successes should have been displayed. "Because today isn't about revealing success," I said quietly. "It's about revealing truth. About showing that achievement doesn't always wear designer labels or drive luxury cars. Sometimes it works silently, builds steadily, and changes the world without needing applause." Aunt Sarah dabbed her eyes. "We've been horrible to you." "No," I corrected her. "You've been blind. There's a difference." My phone buzzed. The president's office requesting a meeting about national security implications of our quantum technology. I declined politely. Today was for family. "I have a confession," I said, looking at my mother. "That tech support job you thought I had? I owned the company. That small office you refused to visit? It was one of 30 worldwide. That simple life you pitied? It was a choice." Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her water. "All those holidays you missed. I was in Pentagon meetings, Mom. Or signing contracts in Tokyo. Or developing technology that will help cure diseases." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Years of assumptions crumbling, of certainties dissolving, of hierarchies collapsing. "What happens now?" James asked, his voice small. I smiled genuinely this time. "Well, we eat turkey. We really talk. And maybe we learn to see people for who they are, not who we assume them to be." Dad stood again, this time without his wine glass. "Amanda, I know," I said softly. "Pass the turkey." As dishes were passed and plates were filled, I felt the shift in the room. The family disappointment had become the family revelation. The quiet daughter had become the powerful CEO. The assumed failure had become the unprecedented success. But more importantly, the masks had fallen. The pretenses had crumbled. And maybe, just maybe, real family could begin. My phone buzzed one final time, another headline. Mitchell Innovations announces revolutionary cancer detection technology. I smiled, reaching for the mashed potatoes. Anyone want to hear about what I really do for a living? And for the first time in years, my family truly listened.